What if the strangest cartoons ever made never made it past your childhood radar? Hidden deep in the vaults of animation history lie bizarre, forgotten, and sometimes banned creations that defied logic and sanity. These are not your Saturday morning tunes. They were fever dreams of artists who dared to experiment and horrify. From surreal nightmares to psychedelic madness, get ready to rediscover the strangest cartoons you have never heard of. Number 15. The Hand, 1965. It looked harmless at first, a Czech short cartoon from the 60s that won international awards. But The Hand by Jiří Trnka became one of the most haunting pieces of political art ever hidden behind clay and puppet animation. The story follows a simple artist who sculpts beautiful flowers. Then a giant disembodied hand appears, demanding he create a statue in its likeness. As the artist resists, the hand grows more violent, destroying his work, imprisoning him in a cage, and forcing him to obey. Beneath its surreal stop motion lies a chilling allegory about totalitarian control and artistic repression under communist rule. Czech authorities immediately recognized the subtext. They banned the film, and it remained locked away until after Trnka's death. Western audiences praised its poetic visuals and tragic tone, comparing it to Orwell and Kafka. Every movement of the hand symbolized the invisible power-crushing creativity in mid-century Eastern Europe. What makes the hand unforgettable is its silence. There are no words, only gestures, terror, and resistance. When it finally resurfaced decades later, critics called it one of the greatest animated shorts ever made. Trnka never lived to see that acclaim. His final film became his own rebellion carved in clay, a silent scream that still echoes in art schools today. Number 14. The Magic Pony, 1947. In post-war Soviet animation, one film broke all rules of logic and morality. The Magic Pony, also known as The Humpbacked Horse, was a dazzling yet deeply unsettling cartoon directed by Ivan Ivanov Vano. Adapted from a Russian fairy tale, it combined stunning hand-drawn imagery with haunting folklore themes. It told the story of a peasant boy who befriends a magical talking pony that helps him face greedy kings and mythical creatures. But what looked like a children's fantasy hid strange undertones. The imagery was bizarre, the color palette dreamlike, the tone inconsistent, shifting from whimsy to fear. Soviet censors initially approved it as a patriotic fairy tale, but later noticed how its characters mocked authority and religion. Some even claimed the film contained cryptic satire about Stalin's cult of personality. Rumors spread that the animation team faced quiet investigation by the Ministry of Culture. For years, certain sequences were re-edited or shortened for re-release. Despite the chaos, the film survived through whispers of bootleg reels and school projectors. Today, The Magic Pony fascinates historians as a surreal bridge between fairy tale innocence and authoritarian allegory. Every frame glows with contradiction, a film that charmed Soviet children while terrifying the regime that made it possible. In its shimmering hand, painted clouds and golden castles, lies a coded cry for freedom, one that slipped past the censors under the guise of folklore. Number 13. The Point, 1971. In the early 70s, America witnessed a counterculture wave that even touched Saturday night television. The Point, created by musician Harry Nilsson, was unlike anything before it. Narrated by Dustin Hoffman in its first broadcast, the animated special told of Oblio, the only round-headed boy in a land where everyone else had points on their heads and their homes. The story felt innocent, but it was loaded with social critique. Oblio and his dog Arrow are exiled for being different. Their journey through strange psychedelic forests and talking trees mirrored the struggles of nonconformists during the Vietnam era. The trippy visuals melted boundaries between dream and protest, while Nielsen's songs carried veiled messages about individuality and rebellion. Though it aired on ABC, it faced backlash from conservative viewers who found it subversive and anti-establishment. Some local stations refused to rebroadcast it, claiming it encouraged defiance against authority. Nielsen's lyrical genius clashed with network executives who wanted to tone down its psychedelic flair. Still, the film became a cult legend. Musicians from Lennon to Morrison admired its poetic courage. Today, The Point stands as one of the first animated works to merge pop art with moral philosophy. Its legacy reminds us that even in times of conformity, the sharpest edge is sometimes found in those who dared to be round. Number 12. Allegro Non Troppo, 1976. At first glance, Allegro Non Troppo looked like a love letter to Fantasia. But once audiences watched it, they realized this Italian feature was more of a wicked parody than a tribute. Directed by Bruno Bozzetto, it mixed beautiful classical music with absurd, surreal, often disturbing animation. Each segment corresponded to a musical piece from composers like Debussy-Ravel and Sibelius. Yet unlike Disney's optimism, Bozzetto's tone was dark ironic and unapologetically human. The film explored greed, vanity, lust for power, and the tragedy of progress. In one segment, humanity evolves from single cells only to destroy itself with bombs. In another, an old woman chases memories of youth through a desolate city of ruins. Critics called it brilliant, others called it blasphemous. Italian state television nearly refused to air it, fearing its biting social commentary and visual audacity. Behind the scenes, the production was chaotic. The small team struggled with limited funding, and Bozzetto's insistence on creative independence infuriated distributors. Yet what emerged was a masterpiece of existential satire. Wrapped in watercolor beauty, it mocked both Disney's moralism and society's hypocrisy. Over the decades, Allegro Non Troppo became a cult legend among animators. Its influence can be traced in modern adult animation and art house films. Few remember its initial scandal, but those who do still whisper how Bozzetto dared to turn a symphony into a mirror, showing humanity dancing joyfully toward its own destruction. Number 11. Harold and the Purple Crayon, 1959. Before it became a gentle children's book classic, Harold and the Purple Crayon was adapted into a short animated film so unsettling that early viewers didn't know what to make of it. Produced by Weston Woods in 1959, this minimalist cartoon followed a boy who enters a blank void with nothing but a purple crayon capable of drawing reality itself. But what looked charming on paper became eerie on film. The world Harold creates is infinite white emptiness, no sound, no music, just the scratch of the crayon and the strange shapes he conjures. Critics at the time noted how the film's stark visual silence felt more like existential horror than childhood adventure. Harold wanders through dreamlike dangers of his own making, walls that trap him, oceans that nearly drown him, and creatures that spring to life from a single accidental line. Kids were frightened, teachers complained, and several schools quietly removed it from rotation. Behind the scenes, the animators wanted to preserve the surreal simplicity of Crockett Johnson's drawings. But the combination of stillness, echoing narration, and uncanny pacing created an atmosphere unlike anything in children's media. It felt less like a cartoon and more like a child navigating a psychological maze. Today, footage is easy to find online, and the short has gained a cult following among animation historians. Some now interpret it as an allegory for imagination battling fear. Others insist it remains one of the strangest educational cartoons ever produced. Harold's blank universe still feels vast, lonely, and oddly profound. A place where creation itself can slip from playful to terrifying with a single stroke. Number 10. Animal Farm, 1954. Few knew that George Orwell's Animal Farm was turned into an animated feature only years after his death. Even fewer knew who funded it. The film, produced in Britain, was secretly financed by the CIA. Their mission was to weaponize animation against communism. The result was the world's first animated political propaganda feature disguised as a fable about farm animals overthrowing their human oppressor. Directed by John Hallis and Joy Batchelor, the film followed Orwell's story closely, until the ending. In the book, both pigs and humans become indistinguishable symbols of tyranny, but the CIA ordered changes, making the animals victorious to promote anti-communist morale. Animators objected, but were forced to comply. When released, it divided audiences. Some called it a triumph of freedom, others sensed manipulation. Communist states banned it immediately, while Western governments quietly circulated it through embassies and schools. Behind the playful animals lurked global psychological warfare. The legacy of Animal Farm remains controversial. It proved that even animation could serve as a weapon in ideological battles. Decades later, declassified documents revealed the CIA's involvement, confirming rumors long dismissed as conspiracy. What began as a moral parable ended as propaganda painted in pastel colors. Beneath its talking pigs lay one of the most secret operations in Cold War media history, a reminder that not all cartoons were made for laughter. Number 9. Fantastic Planet, 1973. When Fantastic Planet premiered, it looked like something from another world. Directed by René Laloux and designed by surrealist artist Roland Topor, this French-Czechoslovak co-production told the story of a distant planet where tiny humans called Oms are enslaved by blue giants known as Drags. The film's slow-motion animation and eerie sound design created a hypnotic, otherworldly experience that left audiences mesmerized and disturbed. At its core, the movie was a political allegory disguised as psychedelic fantasy. It explored oppression, rebellion, and the struggle for freedom. The Drags meditated and floated in mystic trances, while Oms were hunted like pests. Some critics saw parallels to racial inequality, others to the Soviet occupation of Czechoslovakia. The authorities certainly noticed. In some countries, the film was censored or quietly restricted for its subversive undertones. Production was a nightmare. The team worked through censorship battles, budget shortages, and political scrutiny. Yet the final result won the Grand Prix at the Cannes Film Festival. Western critics praised its imagination, but parents found it too disturbing for children. It was neither for kids nor entirely for adults. Over time, Fantastic Planet became a cult monument of counterculture animation. Its visuals inspired musicians, filmmakers, and animators from the 70s onward. Even today, it feels alien and prophetic. The film's final message is chilling. No matter how high the intellect climbs, it always risks crushing the small, fragile voices below it. Number 8. Watership Down, 1978. When audiences first saw Watership Down, they expected a gentle tale about rabbits. What they got instead was a brutal animated epic about death, tyranny, and survival. Directed by Martin Rosen and based on Richard Adams's novel, it told of a group of rabbits escaping their doomed warren to find a new home, only to face predators' traps and warfare among their own kind. The film's watercolor beauty contrasted with moments of shocking violence. Blood flowed freely as animals clawed and tore at each other. For a generation of children, it was pure nightmare fuel. British parents protested. Schools banned it. Yet critics hailed its artistic depth, calling it one of the most mature animated features ever made. Behind the scenes, the production faced chaos. The budget ballooned, the animators clashed over tone, and Adams himself was frustrated by changes to his story. Still, the final film captured something primal about fear and faith. It treated its animal characters as complex beings capable of courage, despair, and leadership. Though condemned for its intensity, Watership Down endured as a milestone of serious adult animation. It proved that animated films could explore mortality and moral conflict without compromise. Even now, its haunting score and dream sequences echo across decades, reminding viewers that sometimes the darkest truths about humanity are told through the eyes of innocent creatures. Number 7. Rock and Rule, 1983. From Canada came a cartoon so ambitious it nearly destroyed its own studio. Rock and Rule mixed post-apocalyptic sci-fi with rock music, creating a strange world where mutated animals replaced humans. The story followed Angel and Omar, musicians caught in a battle against a demonic villain named Mock, who plans to summon evil forces through music itself. The film featured songs by Lou Reed, Debbie Harry, Iggy Pop, and Cheap Trick. It should have been a hit. Instead, it became one of the strangest disasters in animation history. MGM executives panicked over its adult tone and dark imagery. They demanded changes, including new voices and an altered ending. The studio behind it, Nelvana, lost financial stability and almost shut down. When Rock and Rule finally released, it failed at the box office, but later found redemption through midnight screenings and VHS circulation. Fans called it a lost rock opera masterpiece. Its animation was daring, and its message about artistic corruption felt eerily prophetic. Today, it stands as proof that the line between brilliance and madness in animation can be razor thin. Rock and Rule burned bright for a moment, then disappeared, leaving behind cult memories and the ghostly echo of guitars played for rebellion, not fame. Number 6. Fritz the Cat, 1972. When Fritz the Cat burst onto screens, it changed animation forever, and not necessarily for the better. Directed by Ralph Bakshi and based on Robert Crumb's underground comic, this was the first American animated feature to receive an X rating. It was crude, chaotic, and completely out of control. Audiences expecting a cartoon about a funny cat instead found a dark satire of 60s America filled with rebellion, race politics, and counterculture madness. Fritz is a college dropout seeking meaning in a world of hypocrisy. The film wanders through riots, drug-fueled parties, and urban chaos. It was a mirror of youth disillusionment, and Bakshi held that mirror uncomfortably close. Censors were horrified. Several theaters refused to screen it. Even Crumb, the creator of the comic, disowned the film, saying Bakshi twisted his message into exploitation. Behind the scenes, the tension was electric. Bakshi clashed with producers over creative freedom, while animators struggled with deadlines and moral outrage. The controversy only boosted ticket sales. Fritz the Cat became the highest-grossing independent animated film of its time. Critics called it vulgar genius, while others labeled it the end of innocence in animation. Its legacy remains divisive. It proved that cartoons could be political, dangerous, and adult. It opened doors for underground animators, but also blurred lines between art and provocation. Fritz the Cat was both a revolution and a warning, a reminder that sometimes the strangest stories reveal truths society refuses to face. Number 5. The Adventures of Mark Twain, 1985. At first, the title sounded harmless enough. Claymation pioneer Will Vinton created The Adventures of Mark Twain as a whimsical tribute to the American author. What emerged, however, was a surreal and at times terrifying journey through Twain's imagination and despair. The film combined several of Twain's stories into one narrative where 3 children travel aboard a flying steampunk airship captained by Twain himself on his way to meet Halley's Comet. But what disturbed audiences most was its tone. Amid beautiful stop-motion artistry came dark meditations on death, sin, and the meaning of life. One segment, based on Twain's The Mysterious Stranger, introduced a shape-shifting figure named Satan, who calmly demonstrates the fragility of human existence by erasing miniature clay people from existence. The sequence was so unsettling that many broadcasters refused to air it. The film flopped commercially. Parents avoided it, believing it unsuitable for children. Yet, decades later, it became a cult classic among animators and philosophers alike. Behind the clay and whimsy hid a portrait of Twain's own cynicism and faith in doubt. The Adventures of Mark Twain endures as one of the most artistically daring stop-motion films ever made. It showed that animation could wrestle with mortality itself. Watching it today feels like drifting through the pages of a dream that refuses to end, where beauty and horror share the same breath. Number 4. Belladonna of Sadness, 1973. From Japan came one of the most visually hypnotic and controversial animated films ever produced. Belladonna of Sadness, directed by Eiichi Yamamoto, was the third in the adult-oriented anime-rama trilogy, produced by Osamu Tezuka. Unlike typical anime of the era, it used watercolor paintings and surreal still images instead of traditional animation. The result was a haunting blend of Art Nouveau and nightmare. The story followed Jean, a peasant woman betrayed by her lord, who makes a fateful pact with a dark spirit for revenge and empowerment. The film's visuals oscillated between sensual beauty and grotesque horror, creating an atmosphere that critics described as both sacred and blasphemous. Upon release, Japanese censors panicked. Major theaters refused to screen it, and religious groups condemned it as obscene. The studio Mushi Productions collapsed shortly after its release, leaving Belladonna of Sadness buried for decades. Only in the 21st century did restoration efforts revive it for art house screenings. Behind the tragedy lay genius. Each frame looked like a painting alive with sorrow and rebellion. Modern critics view it as a feminist allegory about power corruption and the cost of freedom. Belladonna of Sadness remains one of the strangest lost jewels in animation history. It is not a film you watch, it is one you experience, a visual hymn of pain and transcendence that still burns in the collective memory of those who dared to see it. Number 3. Mind Game, 2004. From Japan came an explosion of color and chaos that defied every rule of storytelling. Mind Game, directed by Masaki Yuasa, was not just an animated film, it was a hallucination that refused to end. The story followed a failed manga artist named Nishi, who is shot by a gangster, then reborn in an afterlife of absurd revelations. From there, he races through time memories and metaphysical landscapes, searching for meaning. The film mixed hand-drawn animation, rotoscoping digital sketches, and even live action. Scenes shifted style, mid-frame reality melted like wax, and logic evaporated. Some viewers left theaters in silence, others in awe. Critics called it the most daring animated film of its generation. Japanese distributors had no idea how to market it. Too violent for children, too philosophical for mainstream audiences, it vanished after limited screenings. But in underground circles, it grew into legend. Behind the madness lay a meditation on second chances. Yuasa poured his heart into every surreal frame, exploring the human spirit's refusal to give up. Years later, he would direct beloved series like Devilman Crybaby and Inu-Oh, yet Mind Game remains his most unfiltered vision. Even today, it feels alive, unpredictable, and strange, as if the film itself were dreaming. It reminds us that animation is not bound by reason, but by imagination, and that some stories can only be told through chaos. Number 2. Fantastic. Mr. Fox, 2009. When Wes Anderson turned Roald Dahl's children's book into a stop-motion adventure, audiences expected a family-friendly delight. What they received was an eccentric existential tale about middle-age crisis wrapped in fox fur. Fantastic. Mr. Fox shimmered with handmade perfection, every detail symmetrical, every gesture deliberate, yet beneath its cozy surface lived melancholy and rebellion. Anderson's meticulous direction created an atmosphere both warm and unsettling. The characters moved like puppets, trapped in patterns of behavior, unable to escape destiny. Critics admired its wit, while some parents complained that the film's themes of failure, greed, and identity were too dark for children. Behind the scenes, production was slow and obsessive. Anderson directed much of it remotely through written instructions, frustrating the British animation team. The result, however, was uniquely his own an animated world, where nostalgia and anxiety coexist. Though not banned or censored, fantastic. Mr. Fox belongs on this list for its strangeness of tone. It was a film for adults disguised as a bedtime story, a mirror for a generation of dreamers who grew up and wondered what went wrong. Its legacy grows each year, inspiring stop-motion artists worldwide. It stands as proof that even in the age of digital animation, the human hand and heart still leave the most haunting fingerprints. Number 1. The Thief and the Cobbler, 1993. Richard Williams spent nearly 30 years trying to finish his masterpiece, The Thief and the Cobbler. It began in the 60s as a personal passion project intended to surpass Disney itself. The film told the story of a mute cobbler, a mischievous thief, and a golden city threatened by an evil vizier. What made it extraordinary was its animation, every frame drawn by hand with impossible precision. But ambition turned to tragedy. Studios grew impatient, and after decades of delays, Williams lost control of his film. In 1993, the unfinished project was taken away, re-edited, and released under a new title, The Princess and the Cobbler. Scenes were replaced, new songs added, and much of the original artistry destroyed. Critics called it a disaster. Yet bootleg versions of Williams's rough cuts began circulating among animators. They revealed a visionary masterpiece lost to corporate meddling. The camera movements were dizzying, the details endless. Artists like Brad Bird and Hayao Miyazaki cited it as inspiration. In the 2000s, fans restored the original version, calling it the recobbled cut. Today, it stands as one of the strangest, most beautiful unfinished works in cinema. A dream that was stolen, dissected, and finally resurrected by those who loved it. It reminds us that sometimes art's greatest power lies not in completion, but in persistence. From clay rebels to forbidden fairy tales, these forgotten cartoons prove that animation was never just for children. They dared to disturb, question, and dream beyond boundaries. Which of these strange creations fascinated you the most? Tell us in the comments below. Subscribe for more hidden stories from animation's dark past, and keep your imagination forever unchained.